On today's show, longtime PR pros for attorneys Denise Nix and Brenda McGann, who help lawyers become trusted media sources, get quoted in top publications, and build real credibility with the media. We'll be talking about how lawyers can use public relations and earned media as a marketing and reputation building strategy by developing relationships with journalists, securing high-quality press coverage, and turning media exposure into greater visibility, credibility, and ultimately new business.
There's the instant gratification of getting your words in print or on the air for people to see. Boom, there's a win right there. But then there's this domino effect. Other reporters will see you and they'll seek you out because they want to hear what you have to say. Clients potentially will search for something that relates to what you've said, and they're going to find that newspaper say, this is the person I want to speak to.
Welcome to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring what makes law firms thrive. I'm your host, Jason Marsh. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and accomplished law firm owners in our space. Together, we'll dive deep into law firm operations, marketing, technology, finance, and everything else you need to build an incredible firm that allows you to live your best life. Hello, welcome back to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jason, and joining me today is Denise Nix and Brenda McGann. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Denise.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I've been really looking forward to this one because I want to try to demystify how lawyers, or anyone for that matter, but lawyers, for the purposes of this show, get real earned media in real press publications, right? It's a powerful marketing strategy, and I think there's not enough lawyers that are really even thinking about it in terms of a marketing strategy because most are thinking about ads or SEO or AEO, referrals. But you're talking about the idea of building credibility, being quoted by journalists as an expert, and how that can then create a ripple effect for your reputation, visibility, and ultimately create some new business. And importantly, I wanted to note, you've said that demand for legal content across media, whether it's traditional outlets, niche publications, or newer platform, has never been higher. So I want to break down how lawyers can get quoted, how to build relationships with journalists, and how to turn media opportunities into a way to grow their practice. So before we get started into all that, because I want to get deep into it, I want to give you both a proper intro. So Brenda, if you're not familiar with Brenda McGann, she's the managing partner of Zomato Public Relations, and she spent nearly 25 years helping lawyers build relationships with the media and get quoted through thought leadership, interviews, and PR opportunities. She's also a former legal and opinion editor at the Los Angeles Daily Journal, a law school graduate of Loyola Law School here in Los Angeles, and also admitted to the State Bar of California. She was recently named to the Law Dragon Global 100 Leaders in Legal Strategy and Consultants. So she brings both a legal and media perspective to this conversation. And we also have Denise Nix with us. She is the principal of Nix Strategic Communication, where she works with law firms and other professional service organizations on PR and content strategy. But before launching that firm, she worked on an in-house marketing teams at 2 different law firms. Prior to that, an award-winning newspaper reporter covering courts and legal issues. So she also brings that journalist perspective on what reporters are actually looking for when they're sourcing and quoting lawyers. So let's get started here. Being quoted in the media can be really powerful, but I think it's also, as we said, an underutilized marketing opportunity for lawyers, right? Because when a credible journalist, right, is quoting you as an expert, that's a completely different level of validation, I would imagine, than just simply talking about yourself. And so as you pointed it out, it can create this domino effect where one quote leads to more opportunities, more visibility, and ultimately more clients. Again, you've said there's a lot of demand for this legal insight across all these new media, niche publications, and some of the newer platforms. So the opportunity is there, but most lawyers aren't really stepping into it. So for me, I think the biggest issue, and like myself, is that lawyers have no idea how this actually works, how to get on a reporter's radar, what they're supposed to say, and how to turn something meaningful that they know within their practice into something a journalist wants to cover. So I want to start there. Denise, For a lawyer listening to this, why should they care about becoming a quotable lawyer? And then how does this actually translate into a meaningful business activity worth the time of a busy lawyer?
No, thank you. I kind of think about this in terms of a little bit of history. Thinking back 20, 25 years ago when I was, just starting out as a newspaper reporter, we didn't have this newfandangled website situation going on. We had newspapers, we had magazines, we had radio and TV. And back then, a lawyer could get quoted by sending out a press release, showing, holding a press conference, saying smart things in court where the reporters are covering their cases. It was a much simpler time. There weren't a lot of PR and marketing firms dedicated to lawyers back then. It used to be when you were a newspaper reporter and you needed to talk to a lawyer, you picked up the phone, you called the managing partner for the firm and said, who's working on this case? And they connected you to the lawyer who was a subject matter expert. Or if you knew a law firm had civil litigation lawyers and you needed some background or expertise about a different case you're covering, you kind of built these relationships with the attorneys that you got to know while covering their cases so they can comment on their peers' cases. And it was kind of a simple relationship building focused event. Fast forward to now, and it's kind of a hot mess in PR land because there are so many publications. Just like the lawyers are blogging and putting their own information out on their own channels, there are online magazines, blogs, websites dedicated to just about any topic or industry that you can imagine. So now there's so many places to go. It's very confusing what's credible, what's not. When we're talking about credible publications, and most people are going to think immediately of the Wall Street Journal or Law 360, the tried and true. Those are the ones that we're going to be mostly talking about today, although there might be kind of a secondary level of focused publications that go towards an industry target that you're trying to reach or a consumer target that you're trying to reach. But for the most part, there's still a little bit of that relationship building, except you have to consider that you're going to introduce yourself to these writers and reporters pretty much new every time you're going to start this process because they have
hold
a
on.
lot to take over.
Let me just stop you real quick just to go back. Just quickly in terms of like for a lawyer, like what is the value to them to being quoted in a publication? And then I want to get into all the details that you're going through. So like what is that value and why is it like actual business activity for them to spend time on? Like what do they get out of it? Just
right. There's the instinct. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's the instant gratification of getting your words in print or on the air for people to see. Boom, there's a win right there. But then there's this domino effect, as you mentioned, of what happens after. More other reporters will see you and they'll seek you out because they want to hear what you have to say. Clients potentially will search for something that relates to what you said on the internet, and they're going to find that newspaper story and they're going to say, this is the person I want to speak to. Or you're going to be able to take that piece of news that you've just created by talking to a reporter and blast that out on your own channels, your firm's website, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, to let people know that, hey, this reputable publication saw me as an expert. And so that kind of gives you the first bite and then the extra bites.
Yeah, so I can see there's a lot of value there, right? You're just people are getting to see you in a very trusted environment, and it's helping to build credibility, right? So let's start with the big picture because I think a lot of lawyers don't fully appreciate necessarily the value of this and how to do it. But there's this concept of earned media. Can we define that? Brenda, can we define that quickly just so people understand what we mean by earned media?
Well, one thing I wanted to add on to what Denise says, in one word, what we're talking about is visibility. And that's the thing that you didn't get as much until the internet came around and websites were around. And now the public, everybody is interested in legal news. So we started to realize there were not enough lawyers who were talking about that. So the bigger picture is earned media as opposed to other types of media, is when your authority in a particular area, like a lawyer has about their practice area, and more specifically, their niche within their practice area. And so when we reach out to reporters on behalf of our clients, we're telling them these are the things that our client can speak directly to. And we try to pick things that are already in the news. And so then when they use you, that's called earned media, as opposed to advertising and marketing. But earned media provides what you mentioned before, that third-party validation that here's someone trustworthy, here's someone who is an authority in this area.
And so you mentioned in your article that there is more demand today than ever for legal commentary across a lot of this, across media and all the different platforms. Why is that? Is it because there's just so much more media today? It's obviously back in the day to launch a newspaper would be a very expensive undertaking, but to launch a website or a podcast like we're doing here, is that what's driving that demand?
You wanted reporters to write about you. You wanted them to write about your case. And then we started to realize that, many lawyers were barred from talking about their case. So reporters had to reach out to people who would talk about other lawyers' cases and discuss the law and discuss potential outcomes. So it became a whole new level. I think what was happening before, reporters were talking to other reporters who were writing about those cases in the courtroom, but then they realized that they could get lawyers to explain the law, talk about the law, and make these, talk about what the judges might be deciding in the end. So that I think that is what, and then there became a demand for that. And then there were more legal publications that came out that were covering law on a national level. And then there became all these top lawyer lists and many publications. The topic is very complex in a way that reporters would rather not write about it. So they're asking lawyers to fill that gap by writing the articles themselves. And I think practice areas have also expanded over the years. That means there are a lot more opportunities to contribute articles in all those remaining practice areas.
So there's just, with a lot of practice area, there's specific publications that cover probably all of those things. Is that the case, Denise?
Yeah, exactly. That kind of goes to what I was saying before about there being all these niche industry facing publications. It's kind of like, because it's so easy to publish now or to have a social media newsletter or a podcast, there's a organization and a blog for just about every industry out there.
Yeah, no doubt about that, right? We're on one of them right now. So you mentioned in your article that just even getting one quote can really become like a domino effect that creates a whole lot of additional opportunities later on. What does that look like? And maybe you can share some actual outcomes that you've seen that lawyers who do this well, what has happened for them and their reputation and their practice.
Well, once you get quoted in a publication, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, other reporters notice you and think, oh, this person is the expert, this lawyer is someone who can talk about this. So they will be calling you. And then from there, you look for other opportunities to talk about similar topics, similar cases, similar regulations or laws that are coming up. And you let the reporters know that you want to talk about those things. So the domino effect is once they see you're willing and able, you meet their deadline, you reply within an hour when they're reaching out, you treat them as an equal, you're easy to work with, and you can turn legal language into the type of commentary that the ordinary person can understand.
But just what is some of the outcomes that have happened for lawyers that do all these things? Because I think, as you pointed out, just being responsive, being easy to work with, right? That makes complete sense. I think it's like that probably anywhere in business. People want to work with people that are easy to work with. But for lawyers that are good at doing this, what are some of the outcomes that you've seen, Denise, in terms of spending the time on it, getting maybe one quote, and then what's happened as that flywheel begins to take hold?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to think about this associate who was at a law firm that I worked at years ago, He came in out of law school and kind of just got thrown into this technology group and started writing about autonomous vehicles, and particularly the rules around what cities are saying about testing back then of autonomous vehicles. And he started adding blog articles on a technology blog that we had, and we were putting those out on social media. And soon enough, a reporter was doing some research, found his blog, and interviewed him for a story, which led to 2 more interviews at 2 other publications, and then a couple of speaking invites at some industry-facing organizations. He was invited to speak to city leaders about how to put these literal legal guardrails in for these autonomous vehicles. And that was now like 15 years ago. I've kept in touch with him, and I have followed his career trajectory. He's a senior attorney at one of the largest law firms in California right now, leading this technology practice. It was all because he said yes to learning and sharing something publicly. He told this story in a way that people understood, resonated, and it created opportunity. Whether that opportunity is advancement in your career or business development, either way, that's success.
That's that's exactly why I wanted to have you both on here, is when you hear those types of stories that it really is possible. Just essentially just went out there. It sounds like just sharing his expertise, but rather than just being at his desk in front of his computer with his head down, he made the point of getting out there, and then all of a sudden other people see you as an expert, and then you just keep getting asked to do things. And so it sounds like he was in an interesting field. The question I want to pose to you all, especially because I think a lot of lawyers listening, especially smaller firms or solos, they might be thinking, hey, this sounds great, but I represent people that have been injured in a motor vehicle accident, or we do estate planning or family law. You're not dealing with these high profile cases or technology or national headlines. Can this strategy work for lawyers that exist in a more local, it could just be a smaller city, but maybe they feel like they don't have these non-newsworthy practice areas? How can that work for them?
The smaller firms that are relying on local news coverage, it is a little bit different. So estate planning, family law, and plaintiffs' lawyers, they can get a lot of publicity from just one good filing every year. If it's a great case and they set it up right, and we can talk about that later. For estate planning and family law, there are not a lot of publications that write about this. And so I think what you have to do is create your own opportunities. A lot what Denise was saying through blogs. And right now, I'm very excited about a Substack. Once you have started a Substack, and when people start reading, they do the outreach for you, and they'll be pushing your content to people who are doing the searching.
What is Substack for those people who don't know?
It is a platform. It's a social media platform that you sign up, and you can start contributing your content, and it promotes it for you.
So I just want to just take a pause here. So I understand what you're saying, right? So on the one hand, there's outreach to publications, and we're talking maybe more national type of publications, whether they're legal focused or not. But then if those aren't available to you, if you are in a smaller practice area that isn't maybe super exciting, it's to create your own content, whether that's on your blog or posting in LinkedIn or in Substack or other similar platforms. Is that what you're suggesting? Because Denise, that sounds a little bit like how your example started. The gentleman was a young lawyer working in autonomous driving, and so he just started writing, and then all of a sudden that was his pathway into getting more actual press coverage. Is that what we're talking about here?
Absolutely. It starts with that. In addition to what Brenda's saying, like, it's a good way to start, whether you're a small firm in a small town or a big firm in a big town, is to start telling your story however you can tell it. Start sharing your expertise, and really importantly, being helpful. In the traditional kind of PR box, that could also look like when there's a story in the news that is about a celebrity, let's say, or a high-profile person in your town, and they're going through a car accident lawsuit or a divorce that everyone in town is talking about, that lawyer who's not involved in that case could certainly be a source of help and information to reporters who are trying to write about this story and make sure that they and their readers understand it. They can show up and be interviewed about what does this mean? What's the family law process? What is a claim versus a lawsuit? They can demystify.
Yeah, that seems like it would be a good entry point. I have an idea that I wanted to ask you all about, and that, let's say, for example, say you practice family law or estate planning law. The laws don't change that much that often, but sometimes they do change. The state legislature change things. Is that, especially if it's something that might be significant, right? I was talking to a lawyer recently. He's a motor vehicle accident lawyer in Louisiana, and the state just passed a new law related to comparative fault. It's going to significantly change the way these cases are handled and how settlements are awarded and so forth. And so it seems like something that when there's is that a good time to say, okay, hey, this is my field. I'm going to write about that. And what do you do then? Do you reach out to, because I know, and maybe we should talk about this, how to try to build a relationship with a journalist. So there's a topic that you think you can actually speak intelligently about. How do you go about getting on that reporter's radar so that you can, maybe they're not thinking of covering it, you can maybe pitch the idea and say, hey, this how do you figure out what is the right publication, who's the right reporter to reach out to, and then how do you go about doing that?
Well, you can go Google it, or you can go on an AI platform and just ask who is writing about this topic in this state or this locality. And you'll see that. And most of the time, if you go to a newspaper, then they're going to have the staff listed on their website, and you're going to be able to find an email. Email's the best way so far through through the media platforms that we subscribe to. Most of the time, they say far and away the best way to get in touch with the reporter is through email. So you reach out, say, see what you're writing about. I have an expertise in that area, and I believe that this new regulation, this new law that's coming up is going to seriously impact how people who are injured in car accidents are going to be able to recover damages, let's say. And I would like to be a source to you to help you understand this law, and hopefully you will contact me. You might want to put in just a little bit about your point of view. It's a good law, this is a bad law, or this law will do that. It won't do this.
And so what is the likelihood of getting a response to, I guess, just a cold email to a journalist on a topic that, maybe it's broadly within their beat, but do they at least respond and say, hey, thanks, but I don't need that right now? Or do they just ghost you, and then do you follow? How does that work? Because I know I would feel awkward to email a journalist. I don't know, even if I'm talking about something I have tremendous expertise in, I would just feel weird about doing it. I guess you got to get over that part. But do they answer you? I guess
you keep doing it till you get a response, and it may be not the same person, but maybe you did get the wrong person. So you start again, you try again. You have a template email that you're sending out, but you're also personalizing it just a little bit, putting in the headline of the reporter's story. We do this all day long. I mean, we do a lot. A lot of people don't respond. A lot of people do. When we do that, we remember them and we categorize them as friendlies. That's how we do it. And then those would be the people most likely to respond to these kinds of things when it's within their beat. Do you want me to talk a little bit about beats, or is that kind of off the top?
Yeah, we'll get into that. I just wanted to be clear. Obviously, you all do this. This is your profession, reaching out to journalists. For those people listening that want to have a go at this themselves, I just want to make sure they understand the process, the likelihood of actually being successful. It sounds to me like it's a lot of cold email. It's just things you have to do a bunch of. You have to be persistent. But it also sounds like, maybe the hit rate isn't going to be super high, but when you get one, the value is going to be really high. So maybe it really is worth pursuing. Now,
can I also give you the alternative? An alternative to that too is just get an article published in maybe a legal newspaper, because journalists read those things. So just getting published somewhere, usually it's the legal newspaper who's on top of this kind of legislation right away, automatically you are identifying yourself as someone who's interested, wants to talk about it, and knows what they're talking about.
Okay, so that's a great point. So again, you're maybe in a practice area that isn't the most exciting, but there are legal publications that do cover your practice area, and you're saying write in those publications because potentially that's where a journalist can discover you for something they're working on and that they want some comments for.
And they usually respond. When you pitch a story idea, they'll respond. They'll let you know if they're interested, or they'll say, hey, someone just wrote about that, but what if you kind of went this direction? Then that's an article we're interested in. So legal editors and reporters are really great at giving you those kinds of directions.
So, all right, that's good. Now, I saw in your article, and this I really liked as a strategy, and it was essentially to say follow the journalist you're trying to connect with on social media and then engage with them, right? Like whatever their post, comment, because my guess is, I mean, assuming they're not getting 1,000 likes, but maybe they're getting 5 likes. They're probably looking to see who's liking their post, who's commenting. If I want to meet somebody, that's a surefire way. I can just go and start following and commenting. They'll see who I am and they'll start to know my name so that when I do send that cold email, it's not as cold anymore. They're like, oh, that name sounds familiar. So that was something you mentioned in your article. Denise, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's anytime you have a chance to interact with a reporter, whether that's online or, at the community fair or wherever, those relationships do matter. I think just as important, though, as having the reporter knowing who you are before you send that email, because chances are they don't, is understanding that they're looking for a good story. They're looking for something that's newsy. Is it going to impact my readers? Is it going to impact my community? Is it going to impact an industry? And so if you could think about the questions that you get from your clients and think about how the answers to those questions impact those clients, that's kind of your story. So going back to your example of a change in a law about motorcycle accidents and, there's a motorcycle accident, there's always going to be a story there. Somebody is hurt, somebody has gone through it, and they're feeling like they need justice or compensation because they're suffering, and suffering is always an interesting story. Unfortunately, in the news business, there's if it bleeds, it leads. So if you
wait, say that again. If it
bleeds, it leads. That was always the old school way of thinking about. And even if you put on your local news at 6:00, it's going to be all the
fires, murder, all kinds of things. Yeah, local news is unbelievable. I come across it every now and then. Usually, it's at my mom's house, and wow, this is horrible stuff going on here. So. If it bleeds, it leads. I like that. Okay, so
they know that's the interesting story. So if you could connect your questions from your clients in the law to things that actually matter and tell that story, that is just as important as knowing who the reporters are before you reach out to them.
Yeah, so and let's talk about that for a second in terms of how important is it to really understand what a journalist's beat is, the type of stuff that they've covered, because I've long heard when it comes to cold outreach, you should, at a minimum, at least understand what the person you're reaching out to cares about, maybe comment about it before you're asking for whatever it is that you want to ask for. So how important is that when it comes to reaching out to a journalist?
They're busy, and so you want to get their attention first through a subject line that does impact what they're writing about. And to do that, you just read what they're writing. It's what the reporter wants to hear, the stories they want to tell. And just like Denise was saying, you do connect with them through those stories. And it's important to know that.
And is it a good idea to comment on something else that they've written on, to say, oh, I saw your article?
Yes, it's good to comment on what they've written on. And so if we get back to that, if you're talking about, you can figure out who's writing about personal injury. And I think you can figure out estate planning, it's probably personal finance. And family law, that is not so clear, and a lot of people don't write about family law unless it's a celebrity. And just Denise brought that up a while ago, where if a celebrity is going through a divorce, there is usually comment, and there reporters are usually writing about that. So you find out who those people are, and then I think that you can connect with them mostly through email, just to let them know that you have the expertise.
And is it important
help
that
move that story along?
If there's a celebrity divorce, let's say, and I know you all are in Southern California where a lot of celebrities, but what if there's a celebrity getting divorced in California or say New York, but you're a family attorney in, I don't know, Missouri or something like that? Is a reporter going to give you the credibility, given the state laws are different in every single state when it comes to divorce and, all the different things surrounding that? So is that worth reaching out, or is that just, hey, somebody that is a California licensed attorney is more likely to get that attention from the journalist?
Yeah.
If you're the only one that's reached, I'm sorry, Denise, go ahead.
That's okay. I was going to say,
no,
if you're
talk at the same time. No, both. Let's. No,
if
go ahead.
If you're the only one reaching out, I in many of these cases, there are not a lot of people doing this because it's not as easy as it seems. It is about, as we've talked about, relationship building. That takes a lot of time. Most lawyers don't have that time, but and so most of them are not reaching out. So just spending a little bit of time every day searching who's getting divorced, finding out where it's filed. When you see that it's your state,
okay.
But even if it's not your state, you can talk in just a very broad way about what happens. I don't think a lot of these cases actually do get into the nitty gritty of what's going on. You can mention, hey, I'm not admitted in that state, but here generally is what happens in a custody battle. Those laws are pretty consistent throughout the United States.
Okay, so all right. Well, so in terms of like news, we're talking about celebrities, but just news coming out, whether it's a new law or a celebrity or just something that happens to be in the news that people are talking about. You've mentioned the importance of timing, especially on like breaking news. So how can lawyers position themselves to get in on that? What does that look like in terms of being proactive and trying to get in front of that attorney? Like, what would you recommend there?
You mean how should attorneys make sure that they're proactive to get in front of the reporters?
Yeah, when they see something that is going on out there that they actually can comment on, what are the next steps they should take? And obviously, how quickly should they be moving? Is there something they can wait a couple days on, or is it sort of the first one that gets in front of that journalist probably has the highest probability of catching their attention?
Yeah, no, the news cycle moves fast, and it's 24/7 these days. So if you're even thinking that you want to try to get your voice into a story, you got to do it now. So the best way to do that is to be prepared. So I always kind of start with a one sheet I have the attorneys create with my attorney clients is, let's think about 3 topics that you can talk about with authority if you were asked about it without even having to do any research. Then let's think about a few things that are happening in the news that you could speak about specifically. And going to your point, if you're an attorney in Missouri and there's a celebrity divorce in California, chances are no one's going to want to talk to you about that. But this is where you have the opportunity to create your own chance to tell the story. This is what Brenda was talking about, is you can create a blog or even on your own social media. You take that Los Angeles Times article about the high-profile divorce and you reshare it on your LinkedIn with some information about why this is really important to people who are going through family law or considering a divorce or are having custody issues. Why this nuanced topic is important. And you can use information like that even when you're trying to create your sheet of what you can talk about. So you kind of start preparing even before the opportunity is there. You already know things that you could talk about that you can tell the reporter. Sometimes I reach out to reporters when there isn't even anything for them to talk about. I just do.
What do you say then?
Yeah, so it's an introduction. Have you met client Joe Schmo? He is a family law attorney who can talk about this, this, and this. Oh, and also there's this law changing. There's a new trend happening where when attorneys are asking for this kind of thing, here's how you should respond if your ex is asking for that. You know, you find that trend, you find that development, and you present. It's almost like you're pitching the story to the reporter, and
you're giving them ideas. And it sounds like by giving them ideas, you're highlighting your expertise just in that. And then, of course, at the same time, I assume you understand they cover this stuff to some degree. And now you're giving them ideas because they're probably just always looking for the next story, the thing that's interesting to write about, and you're helping them with that. You're now, it would seem, positioning yourself as a resource, showing your expertise, giving them ideas, and then I would imagine if they say, oh, cool, I do want to write something about this topic, they're going to use that attorney that you've recommended, or you as an attorney, for suggesting the idea to get some quotes and get some information from you.
It goes back to being helpful. Think about what people want to know and how you can help them understand it.
And let me elaborate a little bit on that, because that is the number one thing that journalists say they need. It's ideas. They can find experts, but if you give them an idea for a story, and a lot of that is maybe a trend, something that you see in your practice that isn't being reported on, then with divorce a couple of years ago, it was gray divorce. All of a sudden, older people were getting divorced. These are people in their 60s, 70s, 80s that just were ready to get out of marriages, and that was a new thing. And so it became something that a lot of attorneys, family law attorneys, began writing about and built practices on just divorces for older people.
So that's interesting. Well, the people getting divorced late, that's my plan. I told my wife, wait till I'm 80 here and out of here. But the idea that one of the things that they want ideas. Now, I had no idea. I thought they had all the ideas. They're the ones looking at the world or whatever they cover and coming up with the ideas. So I think that's a really interesting point, that if you have ideas, share those ideas. And I think you had said earlier, you can just use AI, talk about, where you're located and who's covering the type of stories that you have expertise in your particular practice area, and then pitch them some ideas, right? I think that's a really cool way to go about it.
And I would tell clients, to every interview, if you're being interviewed on one topic, go there, because the last question always is there anything else that I haven't asked that you would like to tell me? And so you give them 2 ideas at that interview where they've already talked to you, they know you, they're happy with what you've given them 2 more ideas, and they say, oh, I like that, I'll follow up. And sometimes if you're interesting enough, and here's something they don't talk about, I hope I'm not getting you off topic, you don't hear enough. You spend 30, 45 minutes talking to a reporter and they use 1 sentence. And it's not even the best stuff you said. And it's disappointing. And then there are times that you're so good, it may not be the topic that they called you about, but they end up writing a second story, and it's filled with your quotes. You're the highlight of that story because you pulled out something, a small little thing that they didn't think about, and they found that highly interesting and very relevant to their beat, which is what they want. And
so, yeah, that's really interesting, right? I could see how that could happen where, you speak for 45 minutes, they either take nothing or they take some tiny little quote that you didn't think was significant, but you can have the opposite of that where maybe you talk a short time. Now, you mentioned something in your article, and I want to point this out because I think it's a really good idea. It's the idea, speak longer. The longer that you speak to this reporter, your chances of getting quoted numerous times in the same article or hitting on something that they really like is good. So talk about that. I thought that was a cool idea.
It's yes and no, because you don't want to just ramble. You're going to just completely annoy the reporter if you do that. We always talk about the sources that give good quote. If you have the opportunity to go through media training, if this is something that you really want to do, especially if you want to speak on video or television, then media training is helpful because it helps you almost like what we're doing in this conversation today. We've got some guidelines we're trying to follow. We're trying to not say We are trying not to speak over each other. We're trying to give each other space to ask questions and have a discussion. You want to do the same thing when you're talking to a reporter. You want them to be able to understand what you're saying, interject when they need to, but it's, see there, we all do it. The idea that you can formulate your thoughts in a really succinct way is going to give you those sound bites, whether it's in written form or on video form, that you really want. So if you do speak for 45 minutes, but you give one really good sound bite that they're going to use, that's a win. Take it.
And what about this? Like, in terms of sound bites, should people be mindful of how long the average quote is going to be? Is it a few words, a few sentences, or is it just, hey, they'll quote you a whole paragraph if it's worthy? Just is there, like, what should an attorney be mindful of as they're talking to an attorney, assuming they're not going to go get media training? I don't know if that's something you all offer. If so,
I do.
I'm going to point them in your direction. But just what should they understand, especially for an attorney who's never talked to a journalist before? What are some tips you can give them? Just trying to give them what they want, giving them maybe some bite-sized pieces as well as some longer things.
If you're new at it, don't try to. It will complicate the whole thing and you'll be too nervous. But if you are talking about your practice and the law as you know it, there should be some excitement there. If you are talking about the law with precision, if you show some excitement about what you're talking about, you don't have to worry about a soundbite in normal type of interview. As you get more experienced and you're thinking ahead, something may come to you. And I keep threatening to write an article about the great quotes, the great sound bites that I've seen. And once you start doing that, using similes and metaphors, it comes a lot easier. But don't put that on yourself at first to have all of these great quotable things. Just talking about the law or the case in a way that is understandable, not boring, then I think is enough as you begin the process.
And Denise, what can an attorney, well, one, what should they avoid doing, right? And if there's any specific things, definitely do not do this. But then what are the things that are going to increase your chances of getting the quote, at least getting one in there, if not multiple quotes in a particular article?
Well, there's two main things. Call the reporter back. That's the first hurdle, because maybe the reporter put out 3 phone calls and they're going to probably take whoever calls them back first or second because they're on deadline. If you don't call them back, you're not going to get quoted, and then you've just lost the opportunity.
Same day if possible.
Yeah,
go ahead.
As soon as possible. And then the second thing is to make sure that you are listening to the question and answering it. If you don't understand the question, ask for clarification. Even ask the reporter, did I answer the question? Does that make sense? Do you understand? Because they probably have an idea of what they want to write, but they need someone else to say it. And they're probably, because reporters do this, feeding you questions that they're trying to elicit specific information from you. So really listen to what they're asking and answer it.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, all right, as we try to bring a lot of this together, we've covered, I think, a pretty good amount of ground, but I want to really dial it in for lawyers that really want to take what you're saying to heart, and maybe they feel intimidated or overwhelmed by the idea of doing their own PR. How can they just simplify this to the easiest way possible so that they can just get started?
I'll take that. I always tell people that PR, or any kind of marketing, is you walked into the restaurant and it's a menu and there's combo plates and there's a la carte and there's side dishes. You're not going to order everything off the menu as soon as you sit down. So what you want to do is think, what am I trying to accomplish and who am I trying to reach? Think about who your audience is, your target audience. Maybe you're specifically just trying to get a high level of newspaper you want to be on. I had an attorney client who his goal was to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. couldn't make it happen for him. I got him on the inside, but it wasn't quite the goal. So think about what your goal is, and then think about the steps that you need to do to work from that. But if you're not thinking in terms of, I need to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, if you're just thinking about it in terms of, I want to boost my visibility and gain a little bit of reputation around this area of law, pick the thing that makes you feel the most comfortable, because you're not going to do all the PR all at once. So maybe it's start looking for those reporters on social media and following and interacting and reposting their information. Maybe it's making a list of 5 reporters and sending emails to them, introducing yourself with some ideas about what you can talk about. Maybe it's something entirely different and you're starting a blog, and then you're inviting people to follow you on LinkedIn, including reporters. There's different ways of communicating in this day and age. You can't do all of it, so pick the one that feels the most comfortable for you. Maybe that's going to that community health fair and giving a free 20-minute seminar about family law or about estate planning. And that is a good way for you to start getting your name out. Sometimes it's about being a part of the awards thing. Now we have legal awards, we have industry awards, but local newspapers do best of awards. Do you want to have that star that says voted best of by local publication? Participate in that survey. That's how the newspaper's going to get to know you, not necessarily the reporters, the newspaper, but that's also going to get your name in the newspaper, which is going to increase your visibility. So there's lots of things on the PR menu. Order the couple of things that you think you can deal with and start from there.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Denise, so for lawyers listening, what's one small but manageable step in terms of everything we're talking about here that they can take this week? What's the very first thing that they can do that might start get the ball rolling for them?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, which is just be prepared. Start listing out, take a piece of paper and start writing down, these are the things I want to talk about. These are the things I can talk about. These are some interesting questions that I get from my clients regularly that other people might want to know about. And just start really kind of sitting with who you are, what you want to say, who you're trying to reach. And then that will start informing who you want to reach out to with what information to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I like that because it's almost like you can make that list, and then once you feel comfortable with the list you've made in terms of what you're feeling good about talking about, then you can start to be like, okay, how do I connect that to the journalist or the publication that would cover those things? And then you can start your outreach process. Is that kind of a good way to go about it?
That's exactly it. I mean, you want to go in prepared. If you just start cold calling reporters and offering yourself as an expert, they're going to have questions for you. And if you're not prepared to answer those questions, then you've just lost that opportunity and your credibility.
All right, Denise. So last question, if you, in terms of boiling it all down, in terms of everything that we've talked about here today, what separates lawyers who are going to be successful at this and actually getting quotes in real publications from those who won't? What are the core things?
It's really understanding that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't expect that your first time out of the gate, you're going to get that quote, you're going to get it. You have to keep trying. It's something you have to work at. And if something that you're trying isn't working, try something else. We've talked about different ways to boost your visibility through PR today. Pick something else off that menu. Don't get frustrated. Something will hit. You just have to keep at it.
Yeah, and it sounds like there is a bit of work involved here, but as we pointed out earlier, yeah, there's some runway, there's some effort that's going to have to be made, and like a lot of things, it's not going to work probably initially, but when it does work, it really does make all that other effort worthwhile, right?
Exactly.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm here today with Brenda McGann and Denise Nix. We've been talking about how to become a quotable lawyer and get mentioned in the press and real publications. So we can find Brenda at Zumato.com. I'm going to put all this stuff in the show notes as well, so nobody needs to be jotting this down, but you can reach her on LinkedIn. Also, I'll share a link to the Law Dragon Limelight, where Brenda, she's a member of the Law Dragon 100 Global Leaders in Legal Strategy and Consulting. I've never heard of Law Dragon before, but I do really like that name. So anyway, But I also note that you mentioned that you're happy to provide a free consultation to help develop a media relation strategy for anyone. I assume they can just go to your website and reach you there or contact you on LinkedIn. Does that sound good, Brenda?
Yeah. Or are you going to post our email addresses?
If you'd like, I can.
Yeah, either way. LinkedIn is fine, but email is still the best way.
Okay, cool. I'll make sure your email's in there. And Denise, we can find Denise at nixstrategicommunications.com. Again, I'm going to put these links in the show notes. Also, you can reach her on LinkedIn as well, and you can feel free, as she says, to email with any questions you've got. You can bounce around ideas. You can share. So now, do you want to share your email, or do you want to just have people on LinkedIn? What do you prefer here, Denise?
LinkedIn is fine. My email is just Denise at nixstrategicommunications.com. So the same domain as my website.
Perfect. All right, cool. So, all right. And I'm also going to include a link to their article that both Brenda and Denise wrote in the ABA's Law Practice Today, How to Become a Quotable Lawyer, what we've been talking about here today. Any last things to add, Denise?
I think I would just say be kind to yourself when you're embarking on a new PR strategy. We're professionals. We do this all day, every day for lawyers, and it's secondhand for us. But I'm not going to go and start being a lawyer tomorrow. I'm not a lawyer. And so if you're thinking that you need PR and this feels overwhelming, there are people like Brenda and I here to help.
Awesome. Brenda, anything to add before we sign off?
I think I put this in the notes, but you need to, especially when you're trying to contribute an article, I know that a lot of lawyers write the article and then try to find a home for it. And for most places, it's the opposite. You figure out where you think the article should go. So if you send a synopsis, get the editor or someone to say, hey, we're really interested in that, write it according to our guidelines, you have a much better chance of getting published. Also, lawyers have an idea that they're going to write a long article, but things have changed. And a 5,000-word article doesn't really have a home in most places unless it's a law journal. It's usually 700 to 1,000 words. I think that is great. Your topic has to be narrow, but it's certainly easier to write 1,000 words, and it has almost the same impact. And I also think that when you are doing outreach, do your research on the publication.
Sounds like it just goes back to what the best publication is going to be to reach that audience. And then if I understand what you were saying, definitely don't write your own article and then go shop it around. Maybe go back to what we talked about earlier, find the publications and the journalists, pitch your ideas, let them say, this is a topic we like. Either you write the article or we'll quote you in the article that we're writing. Is that the better approach?
I think the most efficient way is to start with trying to get quotes, and then if that doesn't really work, then you look for an article opportunity.
Got it. All right. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. Brenda McGann and Denise Nix, everybody. That's going to be it for today. We've got some great new shows coming, so stay tuned and check it out. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for listening to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Marsh, and I appreciate you joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other lawyers who might benefit. You can find more resources and insights on building a thriving law firm at alphalawyer.io or the Alpha Lawyer YouTube channel. Till next time, keep building the firm of your dreams so you can live your best life.